Let's bring in Alexander Stubb now. He's the former Prime Minister of Finland. He joins us live from Florence in Italy. And Prime Minister, thanks for your time. I wanted to begin on this issue surrounding Turkey because, as you have just heard, Turkey's Erdogan suggesting that he would not support Finland and Sweden joining NATO. That is despite both countries historically long supporting Turkey's EU ambitions. Is there a chance that Erdogan could actually block this bid?
Yeah, well, we don't know at this stage. I think it's a little bit early to say. Obviously, the noises that we're hearing from Ankara are worrying. At the same time, we have to understand that NATO is an alliance of 30 member states. There are a lot of national and domestic politics involved. Turkey is one of the biggest countries in NATO and has issues with, for instance, the Kurdish minority, PKK. It has issues with arms exports and the alike. So I'm sure there'll be discussions going on. You should also remember that the Finnish president, who by the way was speaking Swedish in that snippet that you had there, and the Swedish Prime Minister, they're going to Washington, D.C. today to discuss the application with President Biden. So a lot of things happening in the next few days, but we Finns are quite cool, calm and collected. So I'm sure this will get ironed out.
So cool, calm and collected, at least for now. But tell me what Erdogan actually wants and what type of concessions might have to be extracted here in order to get this deal over the line. As you say, NATO has to be unanimous in this decision, and he's still standing on the sidelines. So what needs to happen next?
Well, we'll have to see what kind of discussions and demands emerge. But as I said earlier, some of them have to do with what Turks call the terrorist organizations. Some of them have to do with arms exports. So I would imagine that there'll be some backroom diplomacy in the next few days. And then there could be potentially some kind of statements. But I really don't know. Just from my experience, these types of things get sorted out. And just a slight recollection, which you referred to as well, Finland and Sweden have both been avid supporters of Turkish EU membership. And that's not exactly very normal inside the European Union. Not only that, it was the Finnish EU presidency in 1999 in December that opened the door for accession negotiations. That was a historic moment. And I'm sure that President Erdogan will remember that as well.
I also wanted to get your reaction to the commentary that we've heard from President Putin following this call from both Finland and Sweden to join NATO. It seems as if he is perhaps less concerned now about NATO enlargement, which is curious to a lot of Russia observers. At the same time, Prime Minister, Finland also stepping away from decades of non-alignment and also, in a way, defying Russia's threats here, which have been continuing as Finland makes this bid to join NATO. How concerned are you by the reaction that we've seen from the Russians and the threats that Russia is now angling towards Finland and Sweden and the rest of the bloc as a result of this NATO enlargement?
Well, two things. The first one is I'm glad you corrected that Finland has been non-aligned, because Finland hasn't been neutral since the end of the Cold War. Unlike the earlier snippet said, it's been a misunderstanding in international media. When we joined the European Union in 1995, we joined it without any kinds of exceptions. And that meant that we joined a political alliance and dropped and ditched the doctrine of neutrality. Now, the Russian reaction, I think you're spot on. Actually, it has been quite moderate. And that is what our president explained as well. And I think the reason is quite clear. Russia does not see Finnish and Swedish accession to NATO as a military threat or security threat. That was also said by Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov yesterday. And it is because the profile that Finland and Sweden will take inside the NATO is going to be a Nordic profile. And remember that Iceland, Norway and Denmark, 3 Nordic states, have been members of the alliance since 1949. So with that profile, I think Kremlin has already counted Finland and Sweden as part of the alliance, although we were not members and not under Article 5, the security guarantee collective defense umbrella. So I think the reaction was moderate and will continue to be moderate. This is not an aggressive enlargement. And final point, We do not join NATO against anyone. We join it for ourselves. For us, foreign security policy is not a zero-sum game.
I also wanted to ask you about the energy dynamic as well, because it does seem, despite months of negotiations, that the EU is struggling to find consensus on a Russian oil embargo. Is it possible for Europe to really switch off Russian energy supplies without causing chaos in supply? And do you think it was a mistake for Europe to ultimately become too dependent on Russian supply as a source of energy? Where should the finger of blame actually lie here?
Okay, I guess you could start by saying that Europe made two strategic mistakes. One is to rely on Russian energy, and the second one is perhaps to rely on American security. Now, the latter I don't consider to be a big mistake, and I think we should continue to do that, but the former certainly was. But this was bona fide, the idea that if you integrate, if you cooperate, if you create past dependency, you actually get closer. Now we've actually seen that energy can be used as a weapon. Second point, I'm actually positively surprised about the speed, unity and efficiency of the 5 waves of sanctions that the European Union has done so far. Now the 6th wave, which is the oil embargo, is taking a little bit of time, but this is also normal. So coal has already been banned, oil will be next, and gas will follow. We will see a situation whereby Europe will decouple itself completely from Russian energy. Now, it's a sequence of events because there are a lot of issues involved here, not only dependency, but also, for instance, gas and oil price. We've actually seen that Russia has benefited from the situation because of the increase in plant. Now, where do we point the finger? Well, I must say that I'm not a huge fan of Germany's Energiewende, so the turnaround in energy. And I'm also not a huge fan of all of those people who since the 70s have been lobbying against nuclear power. Now, Finland, we did it the right way. We have a very broad energy portfolio, including nuclear. So when last Friday, Russia turned electricity, in other words, gas off, we could immediately move to another grid. It's only 5% of our overall energy consumption. So I think this will lead to a quicker green transition, and that's what we'll see coming out from the Commission.
Well, that's certainly what Europe hopes for, but of course, this is really the linchpin when it comes to progress on exactly what happens next. Europe stuck between a rock and a hard place here. Alexander, before I let you go, I wanted to tap into some of your diplomatic experience as well. Of course, President Putin using that Victory Day speech on May 9 to suggest that he has no intention of backing down at this point. And that is despite British intelligence suggesting that Russia has now lost a third of its ground forces in Ukraine. What do you think is going to happen next, and how do you see this war ending, if at all?
Well, yeah, I was foreign minister in 2008 and chairman of the OSCE and brokered the ceasefire in Georgia in 5 days, in both Tbilisi and in Moscow. And with hindsight, it's easy to say that that was easy because the stakes were so low. Now, the problem here is that the stakes are too high. This is basically about Putin's legacy. He wants a historic Russia, which means one language, one religion, and one leader. And it also basically means that he wants to see himself as a great Russian leader like Stalin or Peter the Great. So in that sense, him backing off is very unlikely. Now, the hope that I put here is that in the Russian language, you have 2 words for truth, and one of them is tactical truth. That basically means that you can lie, but you do it for the common good, and everyone understands that. So I hope that Putin will come out at some stage and lie that he won the war and achieved his goals, but I can't give you a date on that. The Finnish winter war lasted 105 days. We're now into 80 plus days in this war. I just don't see an end to it. This is going to be a conflict that lasts for quite a long time, I'm afraid.